Liz Hill. Welcome to Podsnappery, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. We explore things I find interesting, unusual, or annoying. So let's get down to it and spill the tea. Back in '97, Mike Myers hosted SNL and brought back Linda Richman, host of Coffee Talk. In that episode, he said something that, well, I'll let him speak for himself.
I'm getting a little verklempt. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. Rhode Island is neither a road nor an island.
Yes, this time we're talking about Rhode Island, the biggest little state in the nation. Here are some interesting facts about Little Rhodey.
Tiny little country. Rhode Island could beat the crap out of it in a war.
Yes, Rhode Island is small. One of the original 13 colonies, and it was the last colony to become a state. Rhode Island was founded by Roger Williams when he was expelled from Massachusetts because of his religious beliefs. He started the state to provide religious freedom for all. He established the first Baptist church in the U.S. in Providence in 1638. The oldest synagogue in the United States, Touro Synagogue, is in Newport, and George Washington once visited there. Rhode Island was the first state to abolish slavery. In 1652, Rhode Island passed a law abolishing African slavery, similar to those governing indentured European servants, where black mankind could not be indentured for more than 10 years. But in typical Rhode Island fashion, the law was evidently never enforced, and the demand for cheap labor prevailed. The White Horse Tavern in Newport is the oldest operating restaurant in the United States, and the 10th oldest in the world. The U.S.'s oldest flying horse carousel sits beachside in the Watch Hill section of Westerly. It was built in 1867, and a traveling carnival abandoned it there in 1883.
One man's trash v. another man's treasure.
Rhode Island has a famous haunted house in Harrisville. It's the one that inspired the movie The Conjuring. They also have a reported vampire buried there, and you can still visit Mercy Brown's grave behind the Baptist Church in Exeter. It is illegal to race a horse down a highway, and for a child to have a cap gun. Rhode Island is called the Ocean State, but could probably be called the Donut State. The Providence-Warwick area has more donut shops per capita than any other place in the United States. There are 23.25 donut shops for every 100,000 Rhode Islanders.
Time to make the donuts. I made the donuts.
Here is the key point. Rhode Island is known for some weird stuff, right? It was the last state to ratify the Constitution, but as one of the original 13 colonies, it was the first to declare independence. You heard me. Rhode Island declared its independence from Great Britain on May 4th, 1776. A full 2 months before the United States Declaration of Independence. Now, when we think of the American Revolution, we tend to think of a bunch of different moments that started the war. Maybe this sounds familiar.
And the British are coming.
Now the ride of Paul Revere set the nation on its ear, and the shot at Lexington heard round the world. When the British fired in the early dawn, the War of Independence had begun. The die was cast, the rebel flag unfurled.
Okay, I love me some Schoolhouse Rock too, but that is a bit oversimplified and not exactly accurate. Some feel it started with the Boston Tea Party, or Concord and Lexington, the aforementioned shot heard around the world. Some even feel it began with the Boston Massacre. Now, no offense to Massachusetts, but it started in Rhode Island.
Believe it. Or not.
It goes back to June of 1772. How can I sum this up quickly? How about this?
The Boston Tea Party is one of the sparks that helped ignite the powder keg of the American Revolution. But have you ever heard of the burning of the Gaspee? It happened 1 year earlier, and was perhaps even more influential than the famous Tea Party. The British Navigation Acts allowed customs inspectors to board any colonial ship. That was a problem in Rhode Island, known for its merchants and its smugglers. William Duddingston, commander of the Royal Navy schooner Gaspee, arrived in Rhode Island in February 1772. He immediately proceeded to aggressively search any vessel he saw fit, and he sent seized contraband to Boston for inspection, a violation of Rhode Island law. His actions created widespread resentment among Rhode Island merchants, especially those connected to the Sons of Liberty, a secret network of U.S. rebels set up to fight British taxation. Tensions came to a head on June 9, 1772, when the Gaspee was giving chase to a local packet boat, the Hannah, and the Gaspee ran aground. Its crew could do nothing but wait for the next high tide. As night fell, a band of local Sons of Liberty rowed out to the Gaspee. The schooner's crew put up a brief fight, ending with Duddingston being shot. After removing everyone aboard, the raiders then set fire to the Gaspee. The incident caused outrage in the British Parliament, which demanded that the perpetrators be tried for treason. Parliament set up a royal commission to investigate the incident, but no Rhode Islanders would talk. In the end, the only person tried in connection with the Gaspee affair was the injured William Duddingston himself, who was sent back to London and court-martialed. So was that musket shot the first of the revolution? In some ways it was. In the months that followed, committees of correspondence were set up across the colonies. They helped patriots to share news and mobilize resistance to the British policies. These underground networks strengthened and grew, culminating in the First Continental Congress assembling in 1774. That solidarity and organization was a direct result of a revenge attack on a very unpopular customs ship in Rhode Island.
Rhode Islanders had attacked the British warship HMS Gaspee on June 10, 1772, as one of the first acts of war leading to the American Revolution. But why? Were they interested in freedom and liberty for all, or were they just looking out for their own interests? Let's go a bit deeper with historian John McNiff.
We're here in Warwick, Rhode Island, along the shores of the Providence River, also seen as Narragansett Bay. Just beyond this point of land, the Gaspee, a British revenue schooner, ran aground and was attacked by the citizens of Providence. The captain was shot, the ship was burned. It's one of the opening salvos in the American Revolution. Rhode Island was founded in 1636 by Roger Williams. Roger Williams was thrown out of the Massachusetts Bay Colony for new and dangerous opinions against the authority of the magistrates. He came down here, made an agreement with the Indians, and started the settlement at Providence. The colony of Rhode Island grew up around that. But we got a charter in 1663 from the king that allowed us a tremendous amount of freedom. We could elect our own governor. We elected our own General Assembly. About 100 years after we received our charter, the British Crown decided that the colonies needed to support the empire a little bit more. It was a tremendous drain on the British economy. So there were taxes, there were trade restrictions imposed. And Rhode Island had felt that since we were defending our own colony, we didn't really have to pay England for helping to defend ourselves. This caused a conflict. The British Crown imposed different restrictions called the Intolerable Acts, the Stamp Act, all of these other things. Trade restrictions, we could only trade with English colonies. And Rhode Island had a long history of doing what it wanted to do, trading with other colonies. Pirates and privateers were based out of Rhode Island. And so when these restrictions were placed on it, Rhode Islanders basically ignored them. In the beginning of 1772, the Crown sent a revenue schooner to Narragansett Bay to control trade coming in and out of the bay, to make sure that people that were trading out of the bay paid their customs and their taxes. This ship was called the Gaspee, His Majesty's armed schooner. It was based just off of Newport, where it could control access in and out of Narragansett Bay.
Interesting. So, conflict with England, we have definitely heard that before. So, they sent the HMS Gaspee to collect revenues and prevent trade between colonies. How did that work out for them?
Rhode Island is a small place. It's only 35 miles wide by 49 miles long, but we have 420 miles of coastline. This was our lifeline. Trade by sea was the lifeline of Rhode Island. And the revenue schooner, the HMS Gaspee, with Captain Duddingston in charge, was choking off the lifeline of Rhode Island business.
Ah, I see. Not freedoms, money. Choking off business. Because in the end, it's all about the Benjamins.
Wake up, Franklin. You're going to New Brunswick.
Like hell I am. What for?
The whoring and the drinking.
Well, not wrong, but Ben Franklin really comes into this story 4 years later.
He would treat every ship that he ran into as if it were a pirate, because surely that's what they are. This lasted for about 6 months. The people here were really getting angry with Captain Duddingston. The governor asked Lieutenant Duddingston to present his papers to the governor. Duddingston refused. He said he did not need to present his papers to a provincial authority. He had authority from the Admiralty. Well, British law at the time said a British warship could not operate within the territorial waters of any part of its dominion without local permission. Here, the Gaspee was operating in Narragansett Bay. There was some dispute over where open territorial waters began and where they ended. And in June of 1772, it all came to a head. The packet Hannah, which normally made a run from Newport to New York, was in Newport, no cargo, and it goes north up Narragansett Bay. The Gaspee sights it and gives chase. Zigzagging up the bay, off of Namquit Point at the time, the Gaspee takes a hard tack to the east, and the Gaspee runs hard aground on a large sandbar sitting there. The Hannah continues up to Providence. Captain of the Hannah, Captain Lindsay, goes and talks to John Brown. And Brown sends a drummer up and down the main street of town in Providence, announcing any able-bodied man that wants to go burn the Gaspee, meet down at Sabin's Tavern. About 80 people show up. They plan. They figure out what they're going to do, and they get into about 8 longboats and row from Providence down the Providence River to just back here. They're coming in single file. The captain comes out in his nightshirt and gets near the bowsprit and shouts out, "Who comes here?" And someone in one of the boats answers, "I'm the sheriff of Kent County with a warrant for your arrest." Just about that time, one of the guys in one of the longboats stands up, grabs a musket, and says, "I can shoot that fella from here." Takes aim and fires.
Ow! You shot me, you a-hole!
Captain Duddingston was struck 5 inches below the navel.
Wow. 5 inches below the navel? That would put it
Right in the kanyigin! Right in the mummy daddy button!
ouch. So much for Captain Duddingston. What happened next?
He goes down. The people in the raiding boats glom on board the Gaspee. They capture it. The sailors are taken off, put into longboats, and brought ashore near here. The captain's wounds are treated. He's put into a longboat and taken ashore, and either accidentally or on purpose, the Gaspee catches fire, burns to the waterline, the fire hits the powder magazine and blows it to smithereens. There's not a trace of the Gaspee left out here. People have looked for a long, long time. What happened? Well, the very next morning, people are walking around in Providence. One guy's got the captain's hat on, walking around. The governor had to put out an announcement saying there would be a 100-pound reward for anybody coming up with any information about what had happened with the Gaspee. Now remember, they had sent a drummer up and down the main street of town. They had all 80 people had met at Sabin's Tavern. As typical throughout Rhode Island history, nobody knew nothing. The king made a proclamation, 500-pound reward. Nobody was ever arrested. Nobody was ever brought up on charges. There was an inquiry, and it went through some very typical Rhode Island isms in that evidence was presented, evidence was denied, witnesses were sick and too ill to go to the inquiry. In the end, nobody was ever prosecuted for this.
They all got away with it. They shot the captain in the balls, captured the crew, burned the ship to the waterline, and no one got caught. Damn, don't fuck with Rhode Islanders. So how did this act as one of the sparks of the revolution?
But what it did was it spurred the other colonies into action. This is where the committees of correspondence started in between all the colonies, so that they were all informed about what was happening with each other and with the British Crown. Now, these were not professional soldiers that did this. These were not well-trained men. These were sea captains. These were sailors. These are the people whose livelihoods were put at risk by the Gaspee sitting out there. They formed together to defend their rights and to stop the Crown from interfering with trade here in Rhode Island.
So the flames of the Gaspee ignited a spark that led to the revolution and the freedoms we enjoy today. To put it succinctly, in June of 1772, brave colonists from Rhode Island burned the British revenue schooner HMS Gaspee during what has become recognized as the first bloodshed of the American Revolution. Since 1965, the village of Pawtuxet, Rhode Island has commemorated this act with the annual Gaspee Days celebration, finding new ways to engage the community and promote awareness of Rhode Island's place in American history. So my take on this is that the first spark was lit by protecting the interests of privateers, smugglers, and pirates. That's Rhode Island for you. I wonder what they said after they burned the Gaspee.
John McNiff sends his regards.
Fighting for freedom from tyranny? Nah, Rhode Islanders just doing what they do best, burning it to the waterline since 1772. As a good friend once observed, Rhode Island, founded by heretics, funded by pirates. We keep tradition alive. So, the willful determination to ignore the objectionable or inconvenient, at the same time assuming airs of superior virtue and noble resignation. That, my friends, is Podsnappery. Thanks for watching. I'm Liz Hill. Remember, to be sure of hitting the target, shoot first and call whatever you hit the target.